thought I would be speaking to in describing Nate's unique contributions and his enormous influence in our field has already been covered. So I'll just make a few brief points, probably no more than 2 or 3, in trying to both situate and calibrate the remarkable research record that Nate Rosenberg compiled, keeping in mind that I and everyone else on this panel, I suspect, are really talking about only part of his research record. We're devoting essentially no attention to his also influential work in the history of economic thought. As many people, I think beginning with Dick Nelson, first thing this morning, pointed out, Nate's research really was a ground-up, inductive approach to the study of innovation and the economic history of technology that emphasized diversity among technologies and indeed diversity among sectors and institutions. And with that in mind, it's remarkable, and it involved a deep grounding in the details of individual technologies and institutions in life. And what is striking, I think, are several things about that. One is the sheer breadth of coverage of different topics, different technologies, different systems that Nate's research covered. We go back in the 19th century to the study expedition of the British group from the 1851 Crystal Palace exhibition, the wooden balloon frame house, the machine tools industry, the coreless steam engine, into the 20th century, the commercial aircraft industry, the chemicals industry, and the medical equipment industries. This is an enormous breadth, and in each of these areas, Nate was really working from the ground up. So I think it's both the ground up approach, but it's also the number of different areas in which he was working that I think are quite remarkable. And as I said, coming back to the point about institutional diversity, Nate also devoted a great deal of attention to the role of institutions, and in particular the role of different types of institutions engaged in the process of innovation and diffusion. We can obviously point to industrial R&D labs, research universities, academic medical research centers, each of which in many respects represents a slightly different ecology of innovation, and all of which he worked intensively on, including a good deal of field work in a leading industrial research lab at the time, Bell Labs, much of which field work underpinned his influential paper on how exogenous is science. And I think also this focus on institutions in many ways helped lay the groundwork for and anticipated much of the innovation systems work that has arisen in parallel with and subsequent to. Another point about Nate's span of topics and fields and subjects of study is the fact that we talk about interdisciplinary research. We talk as economists or historians in many cases about collaborating with people within our field who focus on different subspecialties. In some cases, perhaps we collaborate across fields, rarely across fields within the social sciences. Nate Rosenberg, on the other hand, was collaborating and co-authoring with medical researchers, with engineers in the form of Ralph Landau, Walter Vincenti, and Steve Klein, and medical researcher Anatine Gelines. This is remarkable in terms of, again, the breadth and the level of both intellectual security, if you will, and intellectual adventurousness that enabled him both to communicate with and to work with and synthesize, I think, a number of very important papers that involved a great deal of bilateral exchange and flow of information and knowledge. But I think with the possible exception of Dick Nelson, economists doing field work is particularly unusual and extremely rare, even nowadays within US management schools.
Nate was a very close friend of mine, and as a person, he was really full of anecdotes, a lively conversationalist, a man of extremely broad interests, as well beyond even this very varied scope of the study of machinery, of development of new products. I read his papers with great pleasure, though probably not with a deep understanding, because it came from such a different viewpoint than mine. But I always found somehow I was reading a narrative, which seemed to be just kind of a story. But at the end of it, there was more than was contained in the story. I didn't just learn about machine tools. I somehow learned about the process in a way which I couldn't reduce to a nice formula, but nevertheless, it was clear somehow you got an insight into the nature of the interactions in a way which was both concrete and general at the same time. I can't quite describe it. I can't quite understand how it happened. His influence, he lives on, of course, in his great influence on the developing thing, which is community. The very size of it here is already kind of remarkable, considering the small number that were involved in this 40 years ago, and to which so many here have contributed. Now, of course, I'm interested in why do we have these peculiar set of institutions? We have a market. Why don't markets work? You know, now the markets don't work in a lot of cases. As soon as you get rigorously into general equilibrium theory, you find out what's wrong with it. Namely, that, for example, one of the things is you look at the number of markets that's supposed to be there and aren't there. Even something as simple as buying a commodity 3 years in advance. If I'm putting up a plant to produce automobiles, obviously what I want to do is sell the product years out. Why not? You may do that a little bit with agricultural goods and minerals, but maybe a year or two. With automobiles, you don't do it. Why not? You don't know what an automobile is going to be like in 5 years. I mean, there are other reasons, but that certainly is one of them. Why that you can't specify the automobile. So already innovation, the fact of innovation, in a way creates problems for the economy as a whole. Not only is the market for innovation is a difficult one, but it's it creates problems for other markets. What you have here is knowledge, and knowledge already is a commodity. It's a commodity. It's costly and it's valuable. What else do we mean by a commodity? But it's reproducible at cost much less than the cost of production. The cost of reproduction is much less. That means, furthermore, if you transmit information, you have no less to it. It's unlike if you sell steel, you don't have the steel. You have the information and the other person has the information. And of course, it can be made use of and probably to your disadvantage. Now this creates all sorts of problems even within, and of course that's a way of looking at it, even within the innovation process itself. It means, for example, how do I communicate? Well, one of the troubles is information is not completely transmissible. So if I am sure that something's going to work, I may nevertheless need financing. And I've got to persuade somebody else of this. And this, by the way, does not imply, I speak of profitability, but it could be within, let's say, a nonprofit organization, the military, for example, especially. which is not been mentioned here, but is a very large R&D component. And the pharmacological industry, which also doesn't seem to be mentioned today, which is a place where I think patents play the biggest role of all compared to other areas. It's subject to a lot of, that's privately produced, but it's subject to a lot of regulation, and there are all sorts of social consequences. So it's not a simple kind of market. We have the enormous expense of testing and things like that. And the question of getting to the point of testing, to getting the financing it to that point, and with a high failure rate, by the way, but by no means it's certainly non-trivial. So I mean, it's a failure rate in the sense of not, even before you get to the testing, because you don't achieve the results. And that's expensive. But then on top of that, when you put the tests in, when you get to a point where something might work, and you go through the really quite expensive tests, you wind up with a situation where many drugs, the cost of development is everything, and the cost of manufacturing is trivial. That's not always true, but there are certainly a lot of drugs which that's true. And it's the social intervention that creates the problems. I can remember, being a little older than the average person here, that there was a point where universities, if a university developed a product, a pharmacological product, in the course of its own research, it would be considered, what's the word I want? Unworthy. Would be considered to be wrong to patent it. If a university developed, I mean, there were drug manufacturing firms all along, but if a non-profit group, if a university developed things, it was considered improper to patent it. That was subject to that it should be given out free. And I think one of the first examples was some University of Wisconsin developed some kind of a substitute for cod liver oil in delivering vitamin D. If you've never tasted cod liver oil, I recommend it. But it was given. It was given it by a conscientious mother to get my vitamin D, which was new. The whole idea of vitamins was new then. And the University of Wisconsin developed a more palatable version of the more palatable version. They decided they would patent it, but of course the funds were reserved solely for the purpose of further medical research. Now, no university today would take that position. Let me Giovanni has suggested a number of topics we should be taking up. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yes, well, the financing creates problems because I'm really convinced that my idea is certainly going to work, but I've got to get somebody to finance it. That applies to profit or not, or military organizations as well. You got to convince somebody else. And of course, the firm may have to convince investors and so forth and so on. But how do you convey, when information is a little vague, you've got some evidence, you're convinced that it's worthwhile, you've got to convince others, and so there's a very imperfect kind of competition, and of course the patent system, as you suggest, has probably evolved enormously, even if the formal situation is unchanged, the requirements, the expectations of what's required, what's be necessary, have changed, I'm sure, a great deal in practice. Let me remark on one situation which Giovanni has raised in the communication with us, what's called the linear model and the alternatives to it. Well, in the first National Bureau Conference on the Rate and Direction of Inventive Activity, which Dick and I, maybe the sole representatives here. It was a paper by Simon Kuznets. And it took for granted the linear model. Simon Kuznets is one of the great figures in financial income accounting, and